sure there's a number of super sleuths watching us right now that will be on the computer and in the books and looking. But Pamela, the Chris Bledsoe residence experience, that was quite fascinating, I guess. And you mentioned Stanton Friedman and Kathy Martin, so I guess this is what we're leading into here.
Right. So Stanton thought that, we could really benefit in speaking with Kathy. Of course, hopefully everyone's familiar with Kathy, the niece of Betty and Barney Hill. But she began early in her sort of investigative life, also looking at the paranormal, because she had a lot of poltergeist activity, I think, in the home where she grew up, but subsequently has sort of aligned that with ET presence. But she had an interest in the paranormal, much the way Ashleigh and I did, and that's why Stanton thought, could really benefit in speaking to her. And so we emailed with Kathy several times and ended up meeting she and Denise Stoner down in Florida to talk about, our investigative techniques and how we thought that we might be able to really resonate with maybe a location where a known abduction had occurred. And Kathy thought of Chris Bledsoe. I'm in North Carolina and he's in the eastern part of the state. And she thought that would be a good fit. So she reached out to Chris and he agreed to allow Ashleigh and I to come there to conduct an investigation. And so we did that in June of 2015.
Okay. And then you were all set up and something happened.
Right. So we had planned to go out around dusk that evening, but a big thunderstorm pushed through and we were unable to go out until about 10 p.m. that evening. And so we first set up a video camera on a tripod, and that was to basically get a nice view of the backyard. And as we stood setting the camera up, we were chatting. Chris was there and his wife and Ashleigh and I, and a few of Chris's family members were further out in the yard, but the four of us were standing by the video camera, just kind of discussing hypnosis and some people that, we had known in common. And so that segment of video and audio lasted for about 8 minutes. And towards the end of that audio from the video camera, you can hear us move away to go under this tree in Chris's yard, about 20 feet in front of the camera. Mm-hmm. To begin the investigation, we use an SB7, a Spirit Box 7 device that sweeps AM and FM radio frequencies at a very, very high speed. And the theory is that offers, the spirits or the beings a platform of communication through this white noise. So you can hear us step away. We're starting the EVP session. But at the same time, you can hear what sounds like Ashleigh and I being brought back on a craft.
Wow.
So we think we had a time warp. And what we thought happened, as we recall the event and subsequent days, we remembered, stepping away from the video camera, going under the tree, starting our investigation as we normally would, asking questions, who's here, where are you, how do you come through, those types of things. And immediately we were directed to look at the moon, to the left of the moon. Well, at this point, Chris's wife and the other family members had gone inside. It was, kind of late for them. So the three of us were left there asking these questions, and we're getting just crazy EVPs coming through, directing us to look at the moon. And there's a bright bright object to the left of the moon. And the moon was about 78% full that night. But this object was much brighter than any of the surrounding stars. And it kind of was pulsating. And that's pretty much all we remembered until we were kind of came to and we were standing shoulder to shoulder. And I remember feeling a little bit nauseous and dizzy. And I relayed that to Ashleigh and Chris that I didn't feel well. And they were like, yeah, I don't feel well either. And we were like, okay, let's go inside. But what was strange, the last memory we had, we were standing there asking questions. We had our equipment. And when we kind of came to, the equipment was on the ground behind us, on the wet ground, which, you know, we would not have done.
Yeah.
And it was turned off. And that was counterintuitive for our entire purpose of being there. You know, we were there to gather evidence. Why is our equipment on the ground turned off? That made no sense. But we just kind of chalked it up to feeling, you know, weird because we had driven 3 hours, we'd had a full day. It's now, you know, clearly late into the evening. We just kind of picked up the equipment and walked back inside. And at that point, Chris's wife came out of the bedroom and wanted to know where we had been. And it was 1 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And we were like, we were in the yard. And she was like, I looked out back, you weren't there. So we couldn't explain that. We just started drinking coffee because we had a 3-hour drive back to my home, and Ashleigh was returning to Georgia. So we just wanted to, like, you know, wake up and get back home. But what was interesting as we left Chris's house, we kind of went around in a big square back to the highway, and there was a shopping center over to the left. And at that moment, this gigantic shooting star just went shooting like right above the shopping center. And we were both like, wow, did you see that? But, you know, in retrospect, now I'm wondering, was it really a shooting star? Or,
Yeah.
you know, it was the craft saying goodbye or whatever. But after we got back, of course, we slept for a few hours. Ashleigh headed back to her home in Georgia. And I started reviewing the audio. Well, so we go out at 10. My audio only ran for 1 hour and 15 minutes. And I was like, okay, that would have been about 11:15, but we didn't go inside and didn't get back inside the house until 1 o'clock. So we had like 1 hour and 45 minutes of missing time. So I called Ashleigh. She was still en route to Georgia. I said, look, as soon as you get home, you need to look at your audio and your video. Something strange happened. I'm missing 1 hour and 45 minutes of audio. And so over the next few days or weeks or whatever, we realized something happened. Well, Ashleigh had not only run her video camera that first 8 minutes, upon which the battery died and we had to replace it, it also ran that entire time that we had the missing time. And what was picked up then was really phenomenal. We probably captured at least 50 EVPs from the audio and the video camera of what sounds like a roar, like, you know, possibly a craft coming in, voices saying, we're on them, we got them, we're abducting. Do you want to know what we left as? Is what they're saying.
Wow.
Like I don't know if they're asking us that or whom, but, you know, get them, we got them. Just clearly, you know, this great audio that indicates they took us. But, you know, then when we have that first 8 minutes, it's like we overlapped ourselves, and the EVPs, the first says it's like a mechanical or a, you know, a robotic voice saying, step out, and Ashleigh says, "We're back." And I'm saying the craft landed.
Gosh.
There are people looking out the windows. Um, and Ashleigh didn't want to be back. I won't repeat what she said, but she was not happy to be back.
She wanted to go with them.
Well, yeah, she did. And I wasn't happy either, but she used, a word that, I won't repeat here,
No.
that she was very upset about being back. So we just discovered that within the last 6 months, because we hadn't really like listened closely to that first 8 minutes because we thought we were just setting up the equipment. But then when we were reviewing the video segment of that first 8 minutes, where we actually captured this probably 6-foot being in the tree, we also heard the audio. So we captured this incredible alien, for lack of a better term, sitting in that tree that we were investigating under. And he's in a black bodysuit. It appears that he's very creamy colored skin with a bony ridge down the center of his head. It looks like he's got night vision on one side of his head. And he's just sitting there, sitting in the tree. And you can also see like the smaller sort of these legs kind of going up towards this other being. And it's a small being that lands on the larger being's shoulder. So we've worked to like really pull that part of the video out, and Kathy's helped us with some of that, and she went frame by frame and actually was able to capture that smaller being who looks like he's got a little jetpack on. He's kind of zooming up next to this bigger being. So all that occurred in the first 8 minutes that we were out in the yard.
Gosh.
So I cannot explain that.
So the voices of the ETs. I mean, what did they sound like? Were they male or female voices?
They were male voices. They were speaking English. They, sounded very professional.
Yeah, yeah.
One was called Captain. They actually referred to one as being the captain, and he says, "I'm in charge." Just incredible audio.
And are you going to publish the audio and the video?
Our plan is to eventually, we've been sitting on this stuff for 5 years because we really didn't know what to do with it.
It's explosive.
We wanted Kathy, to work with us, and she's been so great, adding her expertise, and not only from her experiences and the ones, with her family members, but also her, just her knowledge in general about footage and being able to help us, enhance the video.
Yeah. Are you maybe in the back of your mind, maybe a little bit concerned that, the men in suits will show up and confiscate it?
Not really, although I have been in communication with a woman who is a psychic. She's worked with police departments and training police officers on cold case files and how to use their intuition in solving cases. She's written some books, and she says that she's actually had visions of me being encountered by men in black. Now, I have no conscious memory of that, but she's really encouraged us to protect our information, and it is copyrighted, and we don't share the actual files with very many people. We're just not sure what to do with it at this point.
Yeah.
It's just such incredible evidence, and I've been, interested in this kind of stuff my entire life. Travis Walton. I remember, when that movie first came out, in his book, and we just don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and the fact that I mean, you think the ETs, I mean, the technology and their own knowledge and ability to pick up on things would be so far superior that they would have known that something was still running, recording them. But I always get the feeling that a lot of the time is that they're so bold and brazen that they want us to talk about what we've seen, and I just get that feeling.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's like breadcrumbs, that they want to drop
Hmm.
around for people who are willing to explore and investigate and I also think, as we were talking earlier, that it has a lot to do with each individual's vibration and the amount of energy that they emit. And Ashleigh and I struggled with this early on in our investigative careers, just researching the paranormal, because we would, watch TV shows or encounter other paranormal groups who were over the moon if they captured 5 EVPs. And we were coming out of location with hundreds. And so we were like, why do we get so many EVPs and other people only get a handful? And when we started studying quantum physics and understanding, that we're all energy beings and we vibrate and what we theorized at a very elementary level is maybe we just vibrate brighter and
Hmm.
they can tune in
Yeah,
on us somehow, that they're getting that signal, that they can communicate with us.
yeah. Now the $64,000 question obviously is: um, were you regressed to find out what actually happened in those 105 minutes?
Yes, that I started having some flashes of maybe what had happened on board the craft after probably in 2016. I would wake up with a lot of anxiety. And I've always been like a really laid back person, just wake up really happy and
Hmm.
ready to meet the day. And I just started waking up and just feeling very anxious and and then I would have sort of glimpses of maybe things that had happened on board, and I wasn't sleeping well. So I sought out the services of a psychotherapist through my job that was a benefit without any cost. So you could talk to counselors if you had any kind of troubles or whatever. So I sought out this woman who was very open-minded. Um, we did some mindfulness and meditation, and some things started coming through with her. And at that point, I reconnected with Kathy, and she conducted about an hour and a half phone interview and felt that I would be a good candidate for, a formal regression. And so I visited her home in 2019 in the spring and had like an 8-hour interview in person, and probably a 4 to 5 hour regression that took me, back through my childhood and to a past life, and then to that event that
Hmm.
night. And a lot of information came through about what actually happened on board the craft.
Okay. Are you in a position to talk about that yet, or not?
Sure, I can share some of that. So what I recall was stepping into like a small, foyer, is the best way to describe it, onto the craft, and there were four beings there. And if I had to guess, they were about 6 feet tall. There were two males, two females. I remember the males being dressed in just this beautiful royal blue, um, like bodysuits, and they each had what appeared to be like a chevron emblem in yellow or
Hmm.
gold, but I'm thinking it was yellow on the left side of their chest. And the one that I think was probably the leader he had a couple of lines under the chevron.
Right.
And
Did,
he was maybe 40, something like that, and the other
did,
one was maybe 30.
so they looked human?
They looked very human. They were, again, very beautiful, good-looking people. Their hair was not as dark as the two beings that I encountered as a 10-year-old. They had more, it was lighter brown hair, pulled back. The male's hair was pulled back, and so was the female's. Their features were very chiseled, really chiseled, straight nose, thin lips, pale skin. You know, they were whiter
Mm-hmm.
than me, but very, very attractive people with dark eyes that were a little bit bigger than human eyes and very dark.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the women were dressed in these beautiful, like almost like an abalone shell, you know, these iridescent
Yep.
colors, their bodysuits. And they had gold necklaces on that went down into a chevron type point. But the males stood a little bit in front of the females, and they were all standing back to my left. But there was a beautiful blue, like a bluebird blue ambient lighting within the craft. And we walked forward out of that foyer into a wider opening to what initially I felt was like a water wall. Um, you know, I don't know if you've seen that kind of thing, like in a
Yeah.
high-rise building.
Yeah.
So in some of my first memories, that's how I described it. But under regression, it came through clearly as more of a plasma wall that was just this beautiful blue kind of going down. And occasionally it would turn green, this beautiful green at the bottom. And what they communicated to me was that's when the ship would begin to energize, the green would come in. And once the energizing of the craft stopped, it would go back to blue. And there, and none of this was spoken, you know, it was all like
Yeah.
mental,
Yeah.
mental download. Um, there was like a matrix of numbers embedded in this plasma wall, but that was the energy for the craft. And so I turned and could look, and we stepped up. It was like into the domed part of the craft. And, you know, I was asking, well, how do you know where you're going? I don't see any windows. And then suddenly these windows appeared. They were like smart windows. They only appeared if you thought about them. But
Gosh.
what they downloaded to me was that they did not need to see where they were going because they hop across timelines. They don't
Wow.
have to see where they're going.
Goodness me. So what was the purpose of taking you up on the ship?
Um, what they related to me was that they have always known me. And this is not the first time that I've encountered them, that they've, you know, taken me many, many times. And they come to this frequency or dimension or whatever periodically as they're kind of probing this part of our galaxy. And at one point, they were here, but it was hundreds of thousands of years ago. They had left their planet because it can no longer sustain life. They came here and then they moved on further. And I think from some of the EVP evidence that Ashleigh and I have picked up, we received information that they're beyond the Kuiper belt, you know, further out
Mm-hmm.
beyond our solar system, past the Oort belt, that like there's some Oort, ORT belt of meteors and ice and so forth. And that's part of, you know, the Kuiper belts out there. But whatever's beyond that. So I have done some research, and I think that's Alpha Centauri.
Hmm.
Um, so, and I don't know if that's Adela, what they call Adela.
Right, right.
Um, so maybe that's where they're from, but
Uh,
they didn't tell me that directly during that
yeah.
event.
And you were under no, I guess, threat or danger at, your whole time on that ship?
No, they're there. They were there just to say hello, and that they've known me throughout all my lifetimes. And periodically they come in, and maybe that's who came and got me when I was that 10-year-old.
I'm thinking you've kind of been blessed with some divine guidance.
Yeah, it feels that way. It really does. I feel very lucky in a sense that I've never like wanted this to go away. It's something that I just want to know more about, and it certainly has led me down the path to where I am today.
Yeah. Do you ever get the chance or at the moment think of, asking them, where did we actually come from?
Ah,
Because you
no,
mentioned they were here, hundreds of thousands of years ago, but who did we come from? Was it them?
I think maybe some of us did, not everyone. I think we're an interspecies, um, and whether it's all flesh and blood, I don't know. Maybe we were
Right.
just forms of consciousness before, or um, I don't have an answer for that. They've
Yeah.
never told me directly.
Yeah. That just sounds like an experience all of us just want to have. Your time on that ship, and I guess the language used by Ashleigh as you were being dropped off.
Yeah, we were very sad to be brought back.
Wow. Well, Pamela, it's been a fascinating chat. We've just gone a little over time, but I could sit here and speak to you for hours. So just before you go, what are you doing now? Are you doing anything in particular?
Well, I'm still trying to communicate to them. I do EVP sessions here in my home in the office, and I ask more questions about where did you take us, even further. They showed me things while I was on board, and Ashley and I have the sense that we were gone much longer than just the hour and 45 minutes, maybe perhaps days or weeks.
Gosh,
If they
yeah,
can bend time, and it appears they brought us back into the wrong timeline at the beginning of the evening. How long were we really gone? And they've told me that we were taken to a conference, and Ashley had some additional um, information come through during her regression about where we were taken and what occurred. But that's her story,
yep,
so
yep,
I won't go into that. But there's still a lot more to the story that I haven't gone into today just for the lack of time, and but we just hope to keep learning more and more about it.
for
And
sure.
I'll never stop asking questions.
No, well, when I was taught from childhood, question everything,
Oh yeah.
and hence the profession I went into as a journo. Um, Pamela, just before you go, do you have a message for other contact experiences who have stayed quiet um, for fear of being ridiculed if their story goes public, but they still want to share their story, not with everyone, but with someone?
Well, I would encourage them to seek out folks of like-mindedness, and they could perhaps meet people like that once we're free to travel again at conferences that um, sort of have a focus on the UFO and abductee phenomena. Um, and there's lots of sites out on the internet. But maybe to first find someone in their area that they could talk to, and not to be afraid, because people need to hear these stories. I think
Hmm.
it may help us all, to understand that there's something bigger and greater than we
Yeah,
are.
yeah. And the fascinating thing is I mean, once you listen, I mean, I've probably listened to a couple of hundred just this year, and the similarities between people's accounts is amazing.
Yeah, and so there's a reason for that. I mean, we're having real experiences, and just like, the monkey men thing, I had no idea that anyone else had ever experienced that until just recently. And so by sharing your story and looking at other people's stories, you find validation
Yep,
for
yep,
for your own experiences. So
yep.
I tell them, don't be afraid,
Okay, great.
open themselves up.
Well, Pamela, thanks very much for your time. It's been a great chat, and we've gone a little bit over, but I could go another hour at least. But I hope to be speaking with you again very soon.
Yeah, I would love to, Dean. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Pam. Stay in touch.
All right, I sure will.
Pamela Nance joining us today.
Thank you.